Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Touching Greatness, the tennis edition, as we get you ready for the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells. And there he is, old friend Michael Joyce, who I was on the court there calling his matches. I don't know what was it, like 75 years ago,
I
Michael?
was gonna say 50.
At least out at
Yeah,
UCLA.
probably about 30,
Has it been that
28.
long?
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
early
Un-
20s. I was probably, yeah,
Yep.
crazy.
But he's a Santa Monica native now living in Delray Beach in Florida. And of course, he has been in charge of taking care of some of the top women in the world. He had number one Maria Sharapova when she was not number one, but you helped her in every respect. And of course, now number four in Jessica
Yeah,
Pegula, and she is really just plummeting up the ladder,
yep.
just fantastic. And she's healthy again, too, which is important. And how about your up and comer, Ashlyn Krueger, who is 41st in the world? The last time we spoke before the U.S. Open, she was somewhere in the 50s, I believe, or maybe low 60s.
Yeah. I think when we spoke during Wimbledon, she was like 80, and then probably in the
Nice.
summer she moved up. U.S. Open, she'd be about 60, and I
Okay.
think, yeah, now 40. So
41. Yep.
going in the
Absolutely
right
fantastic.
direction.
All
Yeah.
right. So tell us what's going on with Ashlyn before we get into the tournament, because I know you guys had a sudden trip around the world and then came back. And I guess she's had a little bit of refreshing time.
Yeah. I mean, this year has been great. Obviously, her results have been great, but at the same time, it's we've been around the world a couple times actually
Yeah.
because, the year started in Australia, and I think she's beaten six top 20 players already this year.
Nice.
With her ranking before, she had to play qualifying in a couple tournaments in Adelaide, where she had to like come straight in from Brisbane and then play qualifying, which adds two matches, and then it's been great, but she's moving up really fast. So some of the growing pains of like we were in Middle East, and she got to the finals in Abu Dhabi, and then had to play in Doha about a day later,
Yeah.
and just trying to manage, staying healthy, improving, and at the same time, obviously trying to win a lot. So yeah, it's new with every player, but she's improving. She's getting better, and she's really believing she belongs there, where she
Nice.
is, and even farther, which is the probably the most important thing.
Yeah. So, what is it that you guys are working on the most where you would like to see the biggest growth spurt and soon? Because get her over the hump as far as beating the best on a consistent basis. That's always the hardest thing for anybody to do.
Oh, for sure. I mean, for sure. I mean, obviously, I've worked with her a long time,
Yep.
and I really think highly of her. Her skill level has always been really, really good. She's starting to figure out how to kind of put all of her weapons together. But I think the biggest thing, she's worked a lot on physical, like during off season, November, December. She spent about 6 weeks in South Florida training with this really good trainer named Franco. He works with Tommy Paul
Okay.
and a lot of top players, and so it was kind of like a boot camp for her to set like a really good base for the year. But I think the biggest thing is she's starting to realize that she doesn't have to play perfect all the time to win. She doesn't, even if she's playing matches where she's struggling a little bit, she can find a way to win the match, to get through. That's just a lot of confidence that you get from when you're a good player and you're in those situations, and you're getting through matches against really good players where maybe you don't feel great all the time. I think that gives you the best confidence. I know she's won 3 or 4 matches this year where probably last year she would have lost just because um, she wasn't as mature and she wasn't as confident. And so I really see her kind of growing fast before my eyes, which is a really good thing, good feeling as a coach.
Sure. Yeah, but before we continue on, we're cutting off the top of your head where you have your hairstyle there. So
Oh, okay. You
we don't
see
want to
my
miss
hair
your
now?
yeah, we don't miss
Yeah.
your long hair, your
Yeah,
Agassi old
no.
hair.
Yeah, you want to, yeah. You don't want to miss that. That's the best part of the show.
Exactly, exactly. So let's get into the how about the American women right now? Look at this. In the
Yeah.
top 50, it was only a couple of years ago we didn't hardly have anybody in the top 50, and there's
Wow.
Ash at 41 right there. I mean, it's just spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, I think I read too. Isn't there like four women in the top 10? Or yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I mean, that's incredible. Considering we don't have Venus and Serena in there, so that was like a double whammy for so many years. But it's yeah, I think it's great to see, and a lot of them are fairly young.
Yeah.
Coco and Ashlyn and there's some other ones in there. So I think the future for American tennis is looking really good on the women and men's side as well.
Yeah, yeah. And let's talk a little bit about the draw coming up here because it just happened today out at Indian Wells. And if you could see that, we see that Ashlyn has a first round match coming up. I assume it's Wednesday. Is that
Yeah, we
correct?
found out now. They play half the draw Wednesday, half Thursday, but she plays Wednesday. They're playing the
Okay.
bottom. We
What
just
time does
found
she
out.
play?
Don't know yet. They
Oh,
won't make
okay.
that till tomorrow, but they said the bottom half plays Wednesday and the top half plays Thursday, and she's in the bottom half. So we'll be
Okay.
ready to play Wednesday, but I'm
So
not
how
sure what
about
time.
she's playing a girl who
Yeah.
has maybe the greatest name in tennis, Volleynuts, which is
Yeah.
unbelievable, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
she was born to be a tennis player.
She wasn't she? Either that or volleyball, but
Yeah,
tennis, yeah.
exactly.
That
So
just
what do you
those two.
what do you know
Yeah,
about her?
yeah, she's a really good player. It's a pretty tough draw. I think she did pretty well here last year. She's a small girl, so maybe that's why she plays tennis and not volleyball. But she's a really good retriever. She's 23. She's last 2 or 3 years she's been like a solid top 100 player. So Ashton's gonna have to play well and play her A game. Conditions here are a little bit tough. It's a little bit different in the desert air, and the last couple of days it's been really windy. It's a really weird tournament in a way because the courts are really slow. They're really gritty and slow, and the balls get really heavy and slow. But then the air is really fast, so you
Okay.
you kind of have to and it changes. If it's warm, it's really, really fast. If it's cold, it's really, really slow. So, this girl makes you play, hits lots of balls. She's played some good matches. She lost to Raya Bakina and 6-4 in the third and in
Okay.
Abu Dhabi. And Andreeva, she lost 7-5 in the third in Doha. So she's a really competent player. But if first rounds are always tough, and you got to find a way to get through and hopefully get your teeth into a tournament.
Right. Now what about the layoff? Is Ashland just like raring to go now, like
Well,
like
yeah, I
juiced
mean,
up more than ever?
well, she didn't. It wasn't that much of a layoff because we got home from Dubai pretty much 10 days ago, which
Oh,
isn't.
okay. I thought it was earlier than that.
No, no, yeah, they had it was 3 weeks. It was Abu Dhabi, Doha, Dubai,
Got it.
and then she went home to Dallas. I went to Florida, and then we met up here 3 days ago. So both
Okay.
of us were only home for 6 days. So
Okay.
she's excited to play in the U.S. because obviously it's going to be the first big tournament in the
Sure.
U.S. They had one in Austin last week, but that was a smaller event, and it would be impossible to play that and then this like so many weeks in a row. So you kind of try to pick and choose some weeks where you can get a little bit rest. But I think she's excited to play in the States. Obviously, I think this was one of the first tournaments that gave her a wild card.
Oh, nice.
When I remember being with her when she won the nationals, when she was in the juniors, and they gave her, that was the year right after the pandemic or so. Remember when they moved the tournament to the fall one year?
Yes.
So they gave her a wild card that year after she
Okay.
won nationals. So there's a lot of special memories for her just starting out, and it's exciting. So she's raring to go for sure.
Okay, so the matchup, just a quick question on that. If Volinets is a smaller person, and
Yeah.
obviously Ash is a big girl who can power the ball, how much is that, or should that be an advantage in this match when the smaller one, and I'm always the smaller one,
Yeah.
no matter who I play. So I'm thinking I got to run around and be more athletic.
Sure. I feel like at this level, obviously Volinets plays tall, strong girls
Of
all the
course.
time, and then she's obviously does pretty well against them because that's why she's in the tournament.
Of course.
So, I think a lot of it has to do with, I feel like Ashlyn's starting to understand how her game works. Not that she did it before, but at a higher level. And
Okay.
I think the thing that's going to be really important is, I mean, it was good in Abu Dhabi. She beat Kastakina finally. She had lost to her like three times,
Yeah, she's tough.
and she's really tough. And this girl plays similar to her in a lot of ways, and that's sometimes the toughest opponent for Ashton is somebody who's gonna, make a bunch of balls and run things down. She sometimes plays better against a bigger hitter or even another big girl, whatever. So, but
Yeah.
she's having more success against that type of player. And I think she's starting to figure out how she can use her weapons and aggressiveness, but also be patient at the same time. Because we know those type of players are just trying to, especially when they're playing somebody who's stronger and serves bigger and maybe has more power. They're trying, like I played like that. They're trying to do everything to take them out of their rhythm, their game, and sometimes it's easy to almost be too aggressive against that type of player. So, picking and choosing your spots is really, and that's part of Ashlyn, just maturing as a player and
Sure.
learning how to use her game.
Okay. Don't yell at me, coach, because I know you guys don't like to look ahead.
Right.
But to get to the second round, I see Svitolina sitting right there at the 23 seat, and she's
Yeah.
always tough. So
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
not going to be the easiest start, but that's what you're
Right.
there for. This is a biggie. This is a great
Yeah.
big tournament.
I did. I when I saw the draw come out, I looked. I was like, "Oh, it's a pretty tough draw." And then I started to look, and pretty much everybody has a tough draw these days.
Yeah,
I
by the way,
mean,
I
yeah,
was going to ask you about how much do you look at the draw, or do you just try to focus on the first one? And I know that's what the players do,
yeah.
but from a coaching standpoint.
I think the players do that, and then they, at least they say they do that.
Yeah,
It's,
quick
it's,
look.
yeah. I mean, I used to always say, "Oh, I just look at the person in front of me," but I always
Of
had
course.
my eye on like who I could possibly
That's what
play.
you got two eyes for,
Right.
right?
Right. I look at everything because the way I look at it, I like to watch the girls play because even if Ashton doesn't play one of them this week, she could be playing one next week,
Sure.
right? So I'm always looking at the matchups and who's playing. Um, I'm not going to pay much attention who maybe Ashton could play in the quarterfinals, but
Of
I
course.
know. But as the tournament goes on, I like to look. I mean, Ashton likes tennis, so she likes to see some of the matchups, and she's likes to watch matches, and that's something that the players I work with tend to be like that. I think it kind of draws me. I mean, Jesse was like that. Jesse's still like that.
Yeah.
Maria was like that. Maria always liked to watch tennis, and so I think you have an idea. I mean, this is a pretty big draw, so it's hard, obviously, to keep up with all of it. But some of these smaller tournaments with the 32 draw, even sometimes 28 draw with buys, like I mean, you kind of know the draw pretty well, and kind
Right.
of who's in it. So I don't think I think I don't think Ashton would like lose a match or struggle because she's thinking about who she would play in the next match. I think
Right.
she's too professional for that. So I mean, one thing I will say, if she gets through volley nets and plays Fidelina, they're similar type players. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, they're kind of similar. I mean, it's not like, so in some ways that might be an advantage. And then obviously when the top 32 seeds have buys, obviously the advantage to a buy, you're ready in the second round and you don't have to play a seed first round, but then you have to play somebody who has a match under their belt. So
Right.
that first match is always, I think, the toughest for everybody. So that can be an advantage if Ashton gets through her first round and then plays the next match. She'll have a match under her belt. So, I'm starting to get the feeling if Ashton plays really well and she plays really high level, I think there's only a few players that I can honestly say like could beat her. I mean, I feel like she can beat 95% of the girls now if she's playing
That's
really
great.
well, and I think she's starting to believe that as well. So Yeah, a lot of it has to do with how she feels and how she plays.
Of course. One more thing on Ash from a mental standpoint. Where is she right now, where you have seen her confidence grow and where she just says, you know what? I have beaten the best players. Now I am ready for anything.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's as a coach and the experience I've had with obviously Ashton and some of the other players I've worked with, it's fun as a coach and it's rewarding as a coach to see their player kind of the confidence
Yep.
build and grow uh, as time goes on. That's I think one of the most important things, and I think as a coach, when you see your player starting to go in that direction, it's a really good feeling. I think the biggest thing that she's probably learned in this last year is, like I said earlier, is like she doesn't always have to play amazing to win the match.
Yep.
I mean, when you're in the juniors and you're a top junior and you have a lot of success, you're winning a lot of matches where maybe you don't not playing that great or you don't feel that great, but you're just good enough to win or you kind of expect to win. So even if things aren't going well, you're like, I got to find a way. I think when girls sometimes first go in the pros, you all of a sudden you're playing, the top pros, especially they can sense if you're struggling or you don't have confidence. And so I've seen Ashton win a lot of matches this year, especially actually going back to last summer, where
Okay.
she's won a good amount of matches where maybe she doesn't start great, or maybe the girl plays tricky style that she doesn't like at first, and maybe in the past she would have probably lost that, and I've seen her kind of turn matches around. I think the coaching helps a lot from the side. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, I think coaches, we kind of always did it. I
Yes.
mean, I used to coach my players. I mean, you might get in trouble sometimes, or you do it kind of in a sneaky way. I
Sort
think
of like a
that's,
third base coach with signals
yeah,
here and there.
sure. I mean, there's different ways to do
When
it.
you
I've had
scratch your
players.
head, that means move back or whatever that kind
Yeah,
of.
of course. I mean, that's why they ended up, making it,
Of course.
because everybody was doing it. It was
Right.
just kind of, but I think now that it's more open. There's times where, I mean, you can't say a ton, but there's, one thing I've always liked about Ashton too is, I mean, you can be the greatest coach in the world, and you want your player to do something, and if they can't do it, it doesn't matter, right? Or if
Exactly.
Ashton's very good at, like, changing, even though she plays, she's a big hitter, she's a
Yep.
strong big serve, she's able to change direction on the ball, she's able to change patterns, like you said, move back sometimes, move in. She's when she's in a good frame of mind, and which she's been, and she's feeling pretty good, she can change on the dime, and which is really a good quality to have. And so again, that's part of, like, I think the maturity as a player. I mean, Jesse's really good at that. She has
Yeah.
her style of game, but she can make adjustments or change where you're hitting sometimes the first ball, or change down the line quicker. There's a lot of things you can do that's like a quick kind of, if things aren't working, you can change something small and quick, and it makes a big difference a lot of times. So,
Yep.
I think Ashton's always been good at that, even going to the juniors. I
Nice.
don't tell her like a ton of stuff, because as a player, you have to be able to figure things out, and you can't have a million thoughts going through your mind. But, there's times during the match, and there's been times where, just a little shift in a pattern, or of a point, or,
Sure.
something court position, or something, that seems small, but it could make a big difference. And I've seen her turn around some matches, the last year, and I think that gives her a lot of confidence going in too, knowing, like, okay, well, if I go out there, I lose the first set, or I'm struggling, it doesn't mean like, I'm done for, kind of,
Right.
and I think when
Yes.
you first go out there, on the tour, and you're playing really high level players, some of the younger players, I think, struggle with that at first.
Okay. Couple of questions about her game from two standpoints that I notice, but I'm not a coach. So I want
Sure.
to get your feel on this. Her serve, her first serve, if that becomes more consistent, and you could probably say that about every player who ever lived, but
Sure.
you know what I mean. If
Yeah.
she gets that in on a more consistent basis because of her power, How much more is that going to give her an edge as she moves forward? And the other thing I'm wondering, the matches I've seen, I didn't see a lot of her in the Middle East, but I
Yeah,
did see some before that. And at times she seems to like want to crush the ball when she doesn't need to. Am I
sure.
seeing things I don't that I'm shouldn't be or what?
Yeah, I mean, if you, no, you're seeing the right stuff, but you also have to realize, like, if she loses, it's gonna be because she's overhitting. She's not gonna like, you're not gonna see her lose too many matches where she's,
Right.
let's say, it's also like the style of game. I mean, even when I
Sure.
coached Maria, I mean, you could look if she was playing well, then she looks really consistent and solid. And then obviously when she wasn't playing as well, everybody's like, oh, she's playing spraying balls all over, right? So
Right.
when you're a big hitter like that, sometimes it's hard to find the find the happy medium.
Right.
Obviously if you're losing.
Right, but how
um
much does discipline come into play when you got to know when your what your strengths are and when not to go for it?
Well, that's the thing, and usually at the really high level, your
Yep.
consistency comes from your shot selection.
Yep.
Kind of where you're going. Even the strong, hard hitters and can play even through the middle of the court a lot of times when they don't want to make errors. One thing also with big hitters is that's where I think the physical is so big for somebody like Ashlyn, especially that her legs are strong because when you're hitting that ball that hard, all of a sudden you don't hit the ball right, right where you want it. Let's say your legs are tired, you don't move up
Yep.
to the ball, or you're really tall and you don't stay down. You're hitting the ball so hard that all of a sudden, it looks like you're making wild errors, let's say, and it's
Yep.
just because you're just not quite in position, or and that's all part of like her experience. And it's also learning how to manage a match. That's basically what your bigger points. Sometimes you got to play a little smarter. You got to play, but but it's tricky. I've seen a lot
Hmm.
of really strong big hitters that try to like you kind of try to rein them in, and it actually is counterproductive because they're still hitting the ball hard. They just don't have quite the spin or racket speed, and it all looks like they're making errors that they shouldn't be making, but when they're actually trying to play more conservative, so it's like that's what makes tennis really hard. I remember, I'll,
Of
I'll tell
course.
you a quick story for your
Sure.
listeners might actually enjoy. Like when I first started coaching Jessie Pegula, because she's smaller than Ashton, but she's a big hitter. She plays very similar in a lot of ways. So I remember when I first started coaching her, I took her to like a few tournaments, the first couple tournaments, and I noticed pretty quick that she would lose a match, let's say, and she'd be like, she has a great return of serve, but she'd be like 1 for 16 on break points or
Wow.
something, and she'd
Yeah.
lose like a tough match, and then you'd look and say, oh well, if she just won like 3 or 4 extra points,
That's the difference.
she'd win easy, right?
Yep.
And then you start thinking, you don't want to like sit there right away and say like, oh, you're 1 for 16 on break points. Are you not clutch, or you're,
I get it.
you're just not right. And so you have to find a way to kind of address it without like it getting even a bigger issue. So a couple more we start working, talking about, and then it's something too, it's tough to practice that. Like, it's a kind of a match situation, even
Yep.
if you're practice, you can't say, oh, break point here, you got to make the return, it's not the same. So I think after a few tournaments, she finally told me, and I could kind of see it, but she said, I had this coach when I was younger that used to always tell me it's break point, and like it's like a cardinal sin to like miss the return or make an error. Like it's break point, I have to like make the girl play because
So
she's
she's
gonna like
thinking too
choke.
much.
Yeah, and it was so embedded in her mind. So she would get to break point by like hitting the ball, ripping her returns, whatever, and then all of a sudden she'd have like double break point, and the first thing in her mind is like, I got to make the girl play. So it really like affected her, and so it took a few months to kind of get out of that. And then I would, and so that's something that's kind of, again, it's like you have to kind of still play the same way, still be aggressive, but like you said, you have to kind of maybe pick a certain spot to hit, or or think, I like to say big targets, go for big, you're still ripping the ball, but you have a big target, and then the first thing, with like you said about her serve, she
Yep.
has a huge weapon on her serve, but again, it's sometimes serving at 5-all in the third set's a lot different than
Oh yeah.
serving early in the match or out of a basket or whatever. And so I think that's something. And then with women's tennis too, a lot of times, men kind of, when they're 15, 16, they start getting like a big weapon, they get strong. Men tend to like think of their serve as a weapon a lot more than women.
Interesting.
And it's just the way it is. I mean, I've coached so many women over the years, some of them that were actually at good serves. Now, the secret, I think, obviously as a player, but also as a coach, I tried to make it like, and I tell Ashton a lot of times, like, don't, your serve is a big weapon. I mean, even if you're like dead even on the baseline, different areas, like you have a big weapon there. So, like, don't just throw away a couple points because you're not. I think when her serve goes off a little bit, a lot of
Yep.
it is concentration, concentration, focus, or she might be focused on the rallies or what she's doing and lose just 10% of that focus on the serve. And then all of a sudden you miss your spot by a couple inches. And then
Right.
also physical, again, as her legs get stronger, Rybakina is a good example. She has a really good serve.
Okay.
She's built very similar to Ashlyn, but she's 3 or 4 years older. I feel like she's probably right now a little stronger in her legs, so she can still push up on her serve, even if they had a 20-ball rally the point before, all that stuff. But
Yeah.
but these are things that Ashton's improving. It's just something you can't just snap your fingers and it happens overnight. I've seen her this year, serve great, like a whole match, or even late in third sets, like still getting free points, and a lot of that is physical. At this level, as the level gets higher, they're going to make you work harder. So
Yep.
it's not like serving where you're playing an opponent, you're having 2-ball rallies, or they're not returning the serve. And the women return serve really good. I mean, I actually think
Sure.
at the top of the game, the women return serve probably better than the men. That's probably the one thing that they do. I
Okay.
mean, obviously they're not, you know, returning 140-mile-an-hour serves. But even going back to Jesse or Marie or Ashlyn, like
Yep.
I actually feel like I would take their returns over 90% of the guys right
Interesting.
now. The
That's
guys
wild.
have severe grip changes. They hit really heavy spin. That doesn't necessarily. That's why they all stand like 15 feet back on the
Right.
return, because
Well,
they
how much
need
of that
time.
though is also the power on the other end where it's not as easy to return it as maybe I don't want to say easy because none of it's easy.
Yeah, well, but I don't. But I think you see more. I mean, when Agassi returned, or I had a good
Oh yeah.
return. I mean, we returned. Those guys were serving just as big. I mean, Richard
Okay.
Krajicek, and
Oh
I.
yeah.
I think the guys stand farther back now because of the strings, the rackets. They have more severe grips. Like when
Yeah.
you have big swings and severe grips, you need more time. They've slowed down the courts a lot, but I still think like somebody like Sampras could like serve and volley against Medvedev and he'd be just fine.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
the thing. I think the game changed, and then of course you have guys that return well. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
saying they. I
No,
mean,
I
a
know.
lot of the top players return really well, but I also think a lot of guys like you see a lot of guys even 40, 50 in the world who have amazing serves and huge forehands, and they're great players, but they don't return quite as good as like a solid returner, right?
Yeah.
And the women kind of, I mean, some of the women have started to stand farther back. That's something that Ashton's dealing with.
Okay.
Some of the girls now are standing farther back to kind of try to nullify, some of her power. And
Yeah,
then
we
you
want
just
to
have,
see the big girl with a few drop shots too, baby.
yeah, she's starting.
Is she?
She has it in her.
Good.
She can do it. It's just, again, it's like using it in matches, right?
Of course, yes.
Being willing to take some chances and
But
do
that also
that.
builds the confidence when you do it.
For sure. And it makes the girls move up in the court, so your
And they're
power's
thinking
good
all it's like,
again.
wait a minute, this one
Yeah.
hits it so hard, and I got
Yeah.
to worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I remember when Maria started to hit some decent drop shots, and she didn't even have good touch, but just being able to do it, they had to
Right.
respect it a little bit. I think it really
Sure.
helped her win 2 French Opens for sure.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay, one
yeah,
more thing on the coaching, on the court stuff. Okay, I think it's great. I think it's way overdue, but
yeah,
I see some of the players, both men and women, they look. It's actually annoying to watch. They're
yeah,
relying on their coaches, and
yeah,
they're yelling at them, and they're asking every 5 seconds.
yeah,
And it's that
yeah.
there should almost be a rule for a penalty on that.
I know.
I'm
Actually,
serious.
I
It's
know
not good.
we've
It doesn't look
no,
good.
no. Well, we've talked. Even Ash and I've talked about it a little bit. I think in some cases, I would say in majority of cases, it's probably hurting the players. For two reasons. Because number one, it's putting too much emphasis, like you said, the players having like, a reason to blame somebody
It's
else
an
in a way.
excuse to
It's an
me.
excuse, right?
Right.
It's an
Just
excuse.
play, baby,
Right.
play.
And then
Don't worry about
there's coaches too that I think overcoach. I mean, I know
really.
I know as a player, as a player myself and then being around great players. Most great players don't like a lot of information.
Right.
I mean, you just you like you, and it's really tough for like the average um player or person to understand that, but it's one of those things, I mean, that if they start to overthink too much, like, a lot of times I can see like 8 things that my players should maybe be doing,
Right.
and most of the battle is how can I get something
Prioritize,
across.
right?
Yeah, prioritize and realize that, that's why it's important to know how your player thinks,
Of
because
course.
something you could say that's gonna, something small that's going to make a big difference just because of the way they think. And I think that's where I see a lot of times now, it's not just the women, the men too, where
Of course.
the coaches are telling them things, and they might even be saying everything they're saying could be right, but the player is just going crazy, and they're overthinking this or they're this, or and I actually think it hurts a lot of the players for
Yeah, and
sure.
sometimes it's on consecutive points too,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
and the
like, "Hey,
players.
you told me to do this, now I gotta
Yeah,
do that." It's like, no,
right.
can you imagine, throw a little golf scenario in there
Yeah.
where the caddy says to his player, "Hey, can you change your grip on this shot?" You gotta look at him like, "Are you insane? Let me
Right.
play."
Well, but also think about this though, like the other sports like basketball and football,
Right,
like can you imagine if you're, getting paid like a ton of money to play for the Lakers, and your coach tells you something and you're looking over there yelling back at them every 2 seconds? I
right,
mean, you'd be thrown off the team, right? So,
exactly.
that goes back to the whole thing of like it's such a weird dynamic with the coaching in tennis, because you're employed by the player, the player employ, and then it's really up to the player how much they want to like buy into what the
Absolutely.
coach is saying or doing, because at the end of the day, I know a good coach and can help a player develop and help them like a ton, but if the player at 5 all in the fifth set or third set has to, rely on the coach to tell him something, I think
Right.
it's a problem. I
Yeah.
don't think that's going to, I think sometimes, and it gives, I mean, I liked, to be honest, I liked when they had the on-court coaching, one time where you could go out during a set. I did that for many years with
Oh, that's
Maria
true. Yeah, that
and
is
with
good. I like
Jesse.
that.
I liked it too. I think the
Why did they
people
change
liked
it?
it.
Do you know?
I don't know, because it always, well, because I think they because I know also the public liked it, because you could, they had a microphone, you could
Yes.
hear the interaction, and I felt like sometimes within 2 minutes you could make a big difference. I mean, usually if the player was winning, if I did a lot many years with Maria, so if she was winning and playing well, there's really no reason for me to go out
What
there,
do you do?
and
Just like,
then,
"Hey, you're doing great. Have a
well,
good rest."
yeah, I mean, the player had to kind of call you out. So
Okay.
so it was
Yeah.
kind of like sometimes maybe I felt like I needed to go out, and I'd be like, like look motion, like call me out, call, and then,
Yes.
but you kind of know there's so many matches. I mean, you kind of get the feeling of like when you would want to like at the same time you kind of like feel like I know Maria's going to call me out here and I'm ready to go kind of thing, because
Right.
she needed it, right? So,
Right.
but again, like, and then in those situations, it might be something tactical, but it's usually a lot of times in those situations, usually mental. It's
Yeah,
something
that's
like,
absolutely.
to try to calm them down, or in some cases pump them up, or make them feel better about the situation. Usually that's what it was. But I do know, like, the people at home enjoyed that. Now it looks a little disorganized to me. Like you
Yes.
said, they're yelling across the thing, and then it's a little
Every
bit
once in a while it's
disorganized.
okay, but when it happens over and over, it's like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like you're at the park. This is
Right.
not professional.
Right.
So I
Right.
wonder if
I
they'll
agree.
eventually change that at all.
Yeah.
A quick thought on the court surface. I understand they changed it this year, and it's
Right.
supposed to be a little bit different. How much of you does that even come into play from
Yeah.
your coaching?
Well, we don't. We actually we practiced this evening, and towards the end of practice, I said to Ashton, because I don't want her thinking about too much stuff, but I was
Yeah.
just like, I said, did you read where they said they changed the surface? And she started laughing. She goes, "Yeah, I read that." She's like, "It's ridiculous. It's the same." So
Oh, so it didn't feel any different then?
it doesn't feel any different. No.
Okay. Now, what
I
I've
mean,
read that the
yeah.
weather sometimes affects that. Is that
The
true?
weather here, is probably one of the biggest changes, and
Okay.
because it can change day to day. Like I said, when it's really warm, the court's very gritty. It's a really slow, gritty court. They
Yeah.
said they changed from, I don't know enough about, like, live cold to
Yeah,
something
they I
else,
guess
but
they said they want to make it more consistent like other
yeah,
courts, so it's
yeah.
not as slow, but in your opinion, it didn't do a damn thing.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and again, I'm not an expert
I
on
get it.
that, but I will tell you, in all the years I've played, a hard court's going to be slower or faster based on the surface on top, like how
Okay.
much sand they put in the court.
Yep.
That's why a new court is going to be usually slower, because there's a lot of sand. It's gritty. When you see the marks on the court, and
Right.
most of these big tournaments, the courts are brand new, so the grit. And then as a court, as the longer it goes without being resurfaced, it starts to speed up. It gets faster, because so if this court looks the same as last year. It seems to play very similar. It's very
Okay.
slow, like it was. The air is fast here, so the ball
Yep.
goes through the air. But the cement, or this, what they use underneath, I don't really think it makes that much of a difference. I mean, I could go all through juniors in
Yep.
California and pro. I could sit there and say, "Oh, it's a slow court. It's new." I didn't ever think like, "Oh, this court's made with this code, and this is
Right.
some cement," and like, I don't think. I think it's something for them to talk about making a deal. I know in the past, Medvedev, a lot of players said like the court was ridiculously slow, and and it's always been like that here, where the ball bounces high, court slow, and then the air's fast. So
Yep.
it's one of those things you just have to kind of deal with. But
Welcome to the
it
desert.
right. I can see how somebody like Alcaraz plays well. I mean, you're always going to have certain games that are going to be better in these conditions, and
Yep.
then other games that are better in heavy, slow conditions. It's just the way it is.
Yep. One more quick look at the women, and there's your depth there on the projected quarterfinals by a few places. Your typical higher seeds. But what are your thoughts on the depth now? Where a couple of years ago it looked like it was going to be one of three people that were going to win, and
Yeah.
now it's like anybody can win, and we're waiting for Ash to cash in on one of these
Right.
biggies, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes tennis exciting. I mean, I think you got to say, the top, Swiatek and Sabalenka,
Right.
they've been the most consistent, let's say, the last few years.
Of course.
You can throw Coco in there, but I always felt like after the first like three or four, it's completely wide open, completely. And then obviously now you're starting to see some of these girls pop in, and you win tournaments like Andreeva. I mean,
Yep.
that helps too. I mean, I don't care what anybody's like, a girl like Andreeva, who everybody knows is a great player. I think she's eight in the world now, and she could be, no doubt, a future number one, right?
Yeah.
But then Ashton beat her at the U.S. Open, like, easy, like, right. So And then same, like you have like Badosa, you got back in the top 10, but then Ashton beat her in Brisbane or Adelaide, right? So
Okay.
she's starting to see this. You remember when you're like a kid and you're like, oh, I have an indirect win over that person, or
Right.
that person beat that person. And it's kind of one of those like tennis jokes, like, oh, I had 20 indirect wins over Pete Sampras, but there is a little truth to it though, because
Yeah,
you
no
start
doubt.
to see, you start to be like, oh, I beat that girl and she did that. I could do that, right?
Yeah,
So
why not?
I
I mean,
yeah, exactly. And again, that's part of that like confidence, that
yep,
inner confidence that you get as a player. Not, obviously you win matches and you go
right.
far in tournaments, but when you start seeing your peers having, good results and playing those top players, and so it's Ted, it's so open now. I mean, people ask me if I think tennis is much better now than like when I was with Maria or whatever. And
Yep.
I honestly think like Maria, Serena, like Hannah and Kleisters, I think those girls would be at the top of the game right now too. I have no doubt. Like
Right.
I don't think Sabalenka is better than Maria was in her prime. I really
Right.
don't. But I will say that the top 80,
The depth.
90, yeah, the depth is incredibly
Yep.
stronger. That's why you see so many of these results.
Yep.
A girl ranked 50, yeah, especially in one match, can certainly play at a top 10 level, and so I think I think it's and I do think also the tour is very long. There's a lot of weeks. There's a lot of back-to-back weeks, and so you start to see like it takes a lot out of a girl to, I think, to win a tournament or get to the finals. I mean, I know when Ashton got to the finals in Abu Dhabi, I mean, she was pretty cooked for like a week. And then
Wow.
you saw the same thing when Anisimova won
Yep.
Doha. She got killed the next match, and
Yep.
Ostapenko. It's very tough to like get to the finals or win a tournament at this level and then bounce back like a couple days later and at a new venue, surface,
Right. Of
everything.
course,
So
it helps to have a 20-year-old too.
yeah, it does. And then obviously, if you get in the top 10 and you get seeded and you might get
Yep.
a bye and you can pick and choose, I think that's where a lot of those top players, you don't see them. They can pick and choose their
Yep.
schedule a little bit
Good point.
easier. And
Good
so
point.
that has a lot to do with, I mean, I can say even this year, Ashton's played three, four, five. She's played six tournaments, and two of the tournaments, maybe three of the tournaments, she's lost because she's just been fried from like the
Wow.
week before. And it's not like fried, like I can't play.
No, I get it.
It's just that little 10-20% where you're just like, it
Where
just
you got to dig deep and it's not
yeah.
there, right?
And yeah, because you just spent 5-4 days digging deep, and you
Exactly.
get to the finals and you're really happy and you feel amazing, and then you're bound to have a letdown a day or two later. It's just
Exactly.
And so I think that's a little bit the schedule, having those back-to-back thousands in Dubai, Doha with
Yep.
I mean, that's brutal, like two
Absolutely.
weeks. And then you have a tournament like this or Miami where maybe in some ways I almost feel like it's too long. You have
Yeah.
like it almost too, I mean, today's Monday, with she'll play Wednesday. If she wins, she'll play Friday. If she wins that Sunday. So now it's like a grand slam. You're having
Here
days
we go.
off in
Every other day.
between,
Be
right?
ready.
Every other day. So you have two like extremes, like in Doha, Dubai, she was playing doubles too. So she was playing
Oh,
some days like singles at 7 at night, and then doubles at 9:30, and then you wake up the next day, you play again at 5, and then it's like,
wow.
so
No
again,
doubles
that's
this week?
she's playing with Jesse
Oh, she
with
is. Oh,
Pegula.
that's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Excellent.
they played twice this year. They actually they beat Ostapenko and Shuai, who got to the finals of Australia. They
Yeah, I
beat them the
remember
week
I watched some
before,
of that. Yeah.
but then they had to pull out because that was when Ashton played like 12 matches in a row, and she
Oh,
was
wow.
completely, and she beat Badosa like 3.5 hours or something,
Oh,
and then they
jeez.
wanted her to play doubles an hour later, and I was
That's
like, "There's no,
insane.
yeah, it's
Oh,
insane."
that's great.
That's
So it's the Michael Joyce Bowl when
I
when
know.
Jesse
It's
and Ash
funny.
are playing together.
Yeah, they're gonna play. They're gonna play here and also in Miami. So,
Awesome.
they both obviously like doubles. I think it's good for your game, and it's good to play. But then at the same time, they don't. They both feel like if they're exhausted or doing well. Like singles is obviously the priority,
Of
but then they,
course.
because it's hard sometimes if you play with a really good doubles player that's all they play is doubles and that's their livelihood. And they sometimes they're good partners, but then there's a lot of pressure there a lot
Yep.
at
Yep.
times too. So I
Not
think
everybody's the Bryan brothers.
yeah, except yeah, exactly. And they didn't have to worry about singles though, that at
That's what
least
I
the
mean.
last 10 years, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
but it's exactly right. So it's good. And they get along well, obviously. And
Nice.
I think Ashlyn, Jess, Ash Jesse can teach Ashlyn a lot, and just with
Sure.
experience. And Jesse turned 31 a couple days ago. She said she can't believe she's. I told her she's undefeated over.
At
Well,
the age of
she's
30.
at the age of 31. Yeah,
That's
because I
great.
thought she was turning 30. I was like, yeah, you're undefeated in your 30s. She's like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? I turned
Yeah, you know what? I've
31.
always thought and was told that if you play doubles, you are learning skills that you will never learn as a regular singles player. And this,
Yeah,
at her age, should be a huge growth thing for her.
I
And with
always,
Jesse, too, of all
yeah.
people.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and but I actually think like Jesse did better in doubles before singles in a lot of
Okay.
ways.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, just early in her career, I think she played a lot of doubles and she had a lot of success in doubles. And like you said, it improved her serve and improved her return and improved like, playing under pressure, like a
Yep.
lot of stuff. And then she even started to beat some players in doubles that she maybe wasn't ready to beat them in singles yet. But then by beating them in doubles, she started to then eventually beat them in singles. So
Oh, that's
I think
great.
there's a lot to say for the doubles.
Yep.
Ashton's always been a really good doubles player. I mean,
Nice.
again, it's one of those things that you just kind of weigh in. Is it like, do you want to sit around the courts for an extra 4 hours, 3 days in a row to play doubles? The actual match itself and the tennis, I don't think there many people would say, oh, it's too much. Like I think they actually like playing. I think part of
Yeah,
it's
you're
just
not
how
running
much do you
around
want.
that much in doubles,
No, I
so
don't
that
think it's.
helps.
I don't really think it's typically. I mean, I know a lot of the top players don't play like in slams and stuff, partly
Right.
because like on their days off, they don't want to be sitting at the courts all day. You could be
Yep.
like fourth match on and you got to follow two men's five setters. And,
No, I get it.
over a two week period, if you're actually trying to win the tournament, you don't, all those days start to accumulate and you could
Yep.
be in the semifinals and just burned out because you've been sitting at the courts waiting to play doubles like three
Yes.
days.
No,
So
I
I
get it.
think that's really why like a lot of the top players don't play. But I think they all have played at a certain point in their career. I think it's a really good launch. And then like you said, it's the best practice. I mean, you're on the
Yep.
court, you're hitting returns, you're serving, it's tough to mimic that or beat that anyway in the practice court for
Yeah,
sure.
so when there's doubles, and there's Jess who just won this past
Oh,
weekend.
nice. Yeah.
That's a great picture with her
That's a great
glass
picture.
trophy. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was really paranoid when I watched it and they handed her the trophy, and I'm thinking, please don't drop that. It's all glass.
Yeah, that's a
That's
big
all
one.
I'm thinking.
Austin, Texas. Yeah,
That's
that's a
nice. So
big one.
anyway, that
That's
hey, a
nice.
win's a win, baby. It's not the
Yep.
BNP Paribas, but what a way
Yeah.
to come into this week, huh?
Yeah. We spent a little time with her. She played Doha in Dubai, so we saw her over there. She did great last summer, obviously, US Open final. After that, she struggled a little bit in Asia. That was a little bit tough. It's a big change going from like the summer in the US and
Sure.
the courts are fast and the balls
But
are
didn't she also
fast.
have
And
an
then
injury though in there somewhere?
yeah, possibly. She lost in, well, she played the championship. She hurt her knee a little bit in
Okay.
Saudi Arabia or something. But and then Australia, yeah, but it's good. She wants to play all the players want to, get some wins under their belt and build the match count and confidence. And so I know she committed to that tournament. It's a 250, so it's
Yeah.
one of the smaller level, but at one top, but she committed to that tournament, I think months ago. And then she was a little burned out in the Middle East, and I think she was a little bit, should I play, not play, but I think she made the right decision,
Yeah.
and
Good for her.
obviously has a lot of confidence going into these bigger tournaments now.
Yep. And let's not forget the men because they're going to get pissed off at me
Yeah.
here. Okay, I've got this laid out by different quarters here, and here's a guy that I guess his last match wasn't so good, but before that he was looking fantastic, and you never know which Vera is going to show up. But boy, does this guy have a ton of talent.
Oh yeah, he deserves to win. I mean, he's always putting himself at the end of the tournaments.
Yep.
It's a little bit, that he's lost a lot of finals, and that's kind
Yep.
of, now it's probably weighing on him a little bit. I mean, but the thing is it's not that it's easier to say, oh, you're good enough to get to the finals, but you're struggling in the finals. I think if he keeps putting himself there, he's going to break through eventually. I mean, look who he's playing in these finals, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it's
exactly.
like, I mean, I think his closest one, he probably should have beat Team that time at the
Yeah.
U.S. Open. But I mean, losing a Sinner, losing a Alcaraz in the finals is, I mean, it's a tough ask, right? But he's putting himself there, so I'd like to see him break through at one of these eventually.
Yeah, it would be nice. And speaking of Sinner, of course, he's not here right now. We had talked about him months ago. Like, would he ever be dealing with a suspension? And now he's got the 3 month ban, and he's out until early May. Uh, your thoughts on that? And it's like, I guess that's about as
Yeah,
fair, at least to a point. He has to suffer something.
sure.
We talked about
Yeah,
Maria in the past, what she had to
yeah,
deal with.
that's right. I think, I personally think the way, and I know pretty much everybody I've spoken to, they're very frustrated at the way the whole thing was handled.
Yeah,
I don't think eh, whether he did knowingly did something or not. I have no idea.
of
I
course.
It's hard for me to believe that he would do something, or whatever he had
Yeah, he doesn't need
could
to. He's
help him.
not
He
the kind of
doesn't.
guy.
Yes,
He's not a
that's
number
my
80
point.
player in the world.
Right. I mean, that's always, to me, that's kind of one of those things. I mean, it's the same like what happened with Maria back in the
Yep.
time. Like, all common sense goes out the window. Like,
Yep.
Maria at that point in her career isn't going to start taking something like that to
Of
help
course.
her win matches. It's ridiculous. But
Right.
with that being said, as a player, you need to be on top of that stuff. It's obviously, I know it's got. I think the way they've handled it is terrible. I mean, just like you see these other players that get, horrible suspensions, or their careers are over, just because they miss tests, different things. And then obviously it wouldn't have been handled like the way it was if he wasn't Sinner. I mean,
If he
it's
was Joe
clear as
Smith,
day.
it might have been a
Yeah,
whole different
exactly.
ballgame.
A
It's
whole
like you
different
got two
ball game.
years and we'll talk to you later.
Right, exactly. That's what they do. I mean, just the fact that when he got the positive test, and they're trying to figure, when if you get a positive test, there's another, you take two sample. There's all these things that go into
Yeah.
it. Usually it takes a few months for them to look into it, and how did you get it in your system? And
Yeah.
during that period of time, they make you shut it down. He's the only person I've seen that played through the whole thing,
Right.
and they kept it quiet. He actually got tested positive in Indian Wells and Miami, and he played both tournaments, and he won Miami. And I mean, it's like insane, right? So I think that just showed what everybody kind of knows already, that, if you have I mean, it's a huge knock to tennis, obviously, if you have the number one player. I mean, Swiatek got off pretty light too, based on
Yep.
what she had. And again, it doesn't matter. I mean, you fail a test. You fail a test, there should be consequences, at least until they figure out because it's what they're doing to everybody. So
Yep.
I just think the way that the tour handled it, and WADA, whatever, I
Yeah.
think, makes it look really like shady. And I know all the players feel the same way.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. The first line of my book, Touching Greatness, is my dad whispered in my ear the second I was born, and that's the only thing that's not the truth in my book. But he
Yeah.
whispered, but he whispered in my ear, "It's all who you know, kid." And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
sort of that way
yeah,
in this case too. Like, if you're good,
sure.
or if you got the right last name, that's
Yeah.
just welcome to life. It's a
Well,
four-letter
it
word,
is.
baby.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this just kind of shows, how that whole system is kind of and again, it's nothing. I mean, listen, if we were a Sinner, we would all do the same thing.
Of
You'd
course.
buy, so it's nothing against him. It's just the way the whole thing has been handled is
I
really
actually think
shaded.
he's dealt with it in a reasonably good way. He hasn't
Yeah,
whined or anything like that. He just like, hey,
no.
whatever you give me, and I'll deal with it.
And he's won. I mean, look at what
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
won. I mean, that you would think that's a lot of pressure and a lot of extra turmoil on the
Yeah,
player.
it's
He
true.
won the US Open throughout the whole thing, and the
Yep.
Australian Open, which
Yep.
is even more impressive that he
Yep.
could do that. So I mean, yeah. I mean, when you look at the 3 months and he can start back right before Italian Open and French,
Yep.
they obviously kind of like. Actually, it was funny. Medvedev did an interview. I thought it was really funny. He was just like, "Well," he goes, I guess now if you get a positive test, they tell you 2 years. You say, "No, I want 3 months," and they're like,
I
okay,
want the
three
Sinner
months.
deal.
Yeah, exactly. The way he did it was pretty funny. I was like, "That's actually what it looks like." Okay, I'll take 3 months, but I want to start here,
Right.
and
And can I
so.
and can I win a couple of matches before it starts, please?
Right,
Right.
right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So
Unbelievable. All right, let's
unbelievable. Yeah.
let's look at the rest of the men's quarters here, and you got Rude going here on this side of the draw. Tommy Paul looks like an interesting guy to me. I don't know. I just for some reason I don't know if he's quite at his peak right now, but
Yeah.
that guy is really coming on in a really positive way.
Yeah. Yeah. It was actually, we spent a lot of time with him in
Oh,
November,
really?
December. Well, just
Okay.
because Ashton started working with a trainer this guy, Franco, Argentinian guy, who
Yep.
he has a gym in Boca there, and he's been Tommy Paul's trainer for the last 4 or 5 years. And so Tommy trains with the other kids and girls, and, the guy has a really good, like a great environment. Like,
Right.
he could have pros training together or kids even sometimes, and Tommy works his butt off. Like, he's just a physical specimen. I mean, he's like
Right.
a freak athlete. um you can tell he's a freak athlete, but then on top of it, he's made himself really like strong. And so, I mean, that's why he's up there. Does he have like the game to win a slam? I don't know. I mean, he obviously is close.
Well,
Like
why is
Taylor
this any
Fritz.
different than a slam? It's pretty damn the same thing in many
Yeah,
ways.
yeah. Except the only difference is 3 out of 5. I mean, a
Okay. No,
three out
you're
of
right.
five
You're right.
is
You're right.
huge. I
That's a
mean,
big difference. Right.
somebody, anybody can pop in and win
Yeah.
this or Miami much more than
Got it.
the French or something, just because of the three. But even a slam, I mean, Tommy's getting to the quarters,
Yeah.
semis, so
Absolutely.
he's putting himself in the mix right there. I just feel like Center, Alcaraz, Zverev. I mean, obviously Novak. Let's not forget about him. I think Novak's playing, isn't he? I saw that Kyrgios might play Novak like
Yeah.
second round. If
Yes. Yes.
Kyrgios win, yeah. So I mean, all of those, to beat those guys in the slam, I think is a whole nother level. But
Oh, I get it.
Tommy's right there. Fritz. I mean, any of those
There's
guys
Taylor.
could pop in and win this
Yep.
tournament for
And
sure.
Taylor, this was a home game for him, so he
Yeah, and I
has
think
no
he won this
excuses.
tournament before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a
he
few
won
years
this.
ago. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
Yeah,
he has a
no,
little. He was a little banged up coming into this, but I think
yeah,
from what I've read, I guess he's okay. Who knows?
yeah. I mean, Tommy, and Taylor, and those guys they're tough cookies. I mean,
Yep.
they're fighters. I mean, Taylor plays a lot. For
Yep.
somebody who's top five or whatever, I feel like he plays a lot.
And how about
Alcaraz, these
how about
conditions
this
are.
guy? He's
Well,
pretty good.
he's going to be the guy to beat, especially here, because again, like we talked about before, the conditions I think are perfect for him. The ball kind of bounces like a clay court; it kind of bounces up high.
Right.
But then at the same time, the air is fast, so he can come into the net and serve and volley even at time. So it's kind of a. I feel like I can see. I think he's won this tournament twice, and I feel like this is a really good conditions for him,
Yeah.
and he's probably the guy to beat here right now.
Yeah. Well, and I got one more guy who's my absolute favorite. Look at
Yes,
that face,
Ben.
baby. I
Ben,
mean,
yeah.
when he wants it, he wants it. And I told you I want to get him and his dad Brian on my show here sometime because
Yeah,
we would have the most incredible discussion. And I remember Brian playing at UCLA
sure.
when I was back there. It was like that's more than 30 years ago, I think.
Yeah, yeah, he's 10 years older than me, I
Yeah,
think. He's probably,
right.
yeah, this kid's talented. I mean, he's and lefty and
Yep.
like this should be good conditions for him here too, with the ball bouncing, being the lefty and the high bouncing and he has a perfect game to do well here.
Yep.
And I think he can keep getting better. I think he's in some ways, which is it's good for him. He's a little raw still.
Yeah,
You can tell he's a
exactly.
little raw. I mean, he's a lot of similarities to Ashlyn, where he loses matches, where he, maybe overhits at times or whatever. But a lot of
That's a
that is
really
just
good
that,
comparison where they are in their career.
yeah. I mean, I think
Like
I
he's
think
what, about maybe a year older or something,
yeah,
maybe?
Ben's like about a year and a half older or
Okay.
something. But I feel like, if you want to compare, man, they're similar
Yeah.
game styles, and they have the ability to take the racket out of the opponent's hand at time, and
Yep.
they're hungry and they want it, but at the same time they're both pretty young and they're still learning.
They
So
make
it's
those unforced errors that
yeah,
youth makes.
yeah, exactly. Because
Right.
it's hard to find, decipher the in between at times. But the talent level that he has, and I think he has a good passion for the game. And then obviously, his dad being kind of lived the life before.
Yeah.
I think it really helps. They seem to have a really good relationship
Yeah.
too. And
What about from a coach's standpoint though? To be a dad, it's
yeah,
hard to imagine doing that and being there all the when you're when you're 20 and 21, the last thing you want to do is hang out with your
I
dad.
I know.
You
Well,
know
I
what I'm
have a little
saying?
bit, I have kind of a philosophy of why it kind of works for them because,
Well,
um,
Brian has got a nice level head. I
yeah,
think
and
that
also
helps.
for sure it does, and also I think it helps too. Like when Ben was in college,
Yeah.
he played his first year like number 6, and then I think even the second year, I think he played even 4, 3. So
Okay.
he wasn't like, even though it's his son, and Brian was the coach of the team. I don't think Ben was a huge like center point at the
Got it.
time. He had to coach everybody,
Yeah.
and Ben, I'm sure he didn't want the team to feel like Ben was getting special treatment,
And
and
Ben was
then
growing into it too.
yeah, and then the first year or two on the tour, Brian was still coaching the team. So Ben traveled with a coach and everything. So when his dad came on, he had that experience of having a few years kind of, I don't want to say on his own, but away
Right.
from it.
Yep.
I think there's a lot. I think when you have these parents that are kind of coaches and you see it kind of run its course, it's usually because the player doesn't ever have time to play on their own or
Right.
come into their
And
own.
I think there's a
Yeah,
more emotional burnout factor there.
for sure. Yeah, it's exactly what it is.
Yep.
And then I mean, listen, a parent can, been around their kid their whole life, watching them play and
Yep.
going to lessons. I mean, the parent's always going to probably know the kid's game maybe better than anybody,
Yep.
probably, but that doesn't mean they're a good coach for them. I mean,
That's
I
true.
mean, yeah, it's like being a good coach is getting the best out of your player and improving and wanting them to listen to certain things and improve.
Yep.
Saying what the player should do. I mean, we can all do that about I can tell you what the Lakers need to do to win the championship this year.
Thanks,
Doesn't mean
coach.
can I walk in there and get them to do it? That's a whole different ball
Talk is
game. Right?
cheap, baby. What can I
Right, exactly. So I
Well,
think that's
all I know is
usually,
about Ben. He
yeah.
is must see TV. Every
Yes.
time I got to watch him. I just love his attitude, his passion, his game. It's something about a lefty who can hit the ball as hard as he hits it. And he's like the Arnold Palmer of tennis. It's
Yeah.
like attack, attack, attack. And if I don't win, I don't win.
Right. Yeah. No, he's a huge talent.
Yep.
He's a huge talent.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
We can getting towards the end of the show here. Here's the prize money situation. That's not too bad. That gives you a little incentive. Hey, we got to win that first round because we're going to make some pretty good extra cash
Yeah.
after that, baby.
Yeah. 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 It's these tournaments are they're doing well for sure.
Yep.
I think Miami next
1.2.
week is the same. Yeah.
Yeah, 1.2 mil is not too bad for a win there, huh?
Yeah, not bad at all.
So the least they could do is take care of the coach when that happens.
Yeah, right, exactly, right?
Okay. And another guy, by the way, we didn't mention just your thoughts of how much you've seen him. That 18-year-old kid from Brazil,
Yeah,
I think it's João Fonseca is how you pronounce
Fonseca.
it.
Yeah, he was actually practicing next to us today.
Okay. How does he look
Oh man, this kid
in
is
person?
good.
I mean,
Yeah, he's so good. He's gonna be really
it's
good.
obvious, right?
Obvious. I'm willing. I mean, I saw him play for the first time, probably like most people in Australia.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I had heard of him, and I heard that he was, pretty good. I knew he won the year-end champion, the that for the younger players at the end.
Right.
But I hadn't really watched him play. And I watched him play Rublev that
Okay.
match, and then I started watching, and he's a lot of hype on him and stuff. But then
Sure.
when you start to, like I was why he was practicing with Dimmenauer
Okay.
next to us today, and you can just tell. I mean, the kid is just like, I could see him being right up there with Sinner and Alcaraz in 2 years, let's say. I
Okay.
mean,
Well, I've
he's
only seen him
really,
on TV, obviously. I'm wondering
yeah.
how he looks physically to you compared
Well,
to
he
the other
looks
top
yeah,
players.
he's not close physically
He's
yet,
18
which
too.
yeah, he's kind of looks like an 18-year-old, right?
Okay.
And
Yep.
so again, that's good thing because
Yep.
he's not even, he's not even like when you look at Alcaraz or, Sinner, physically he doesn't compare to them yet, but then at the same time he's hitting the ball unbelievably hard. I mean, he was making Dimmenauer, who's I think ranked 7 or 8 in the world, look
Okay.
like from when you just look at the ball going back and forth.
Yes.
Dimmenauer looked like he was playing high school tennis.
Wow.
The kid hits the heavy, like unbelievably heavy ball. He's like dynamic. He's coming to the net. He serves pretty well right now. I mean, he has, but he's young, obviously. But besides that, he has all the tools to compete with the top guys right now.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
on clay, he must really be nasty. And so I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I mean, he's the type of guy that could pop in and, be in the semis or finals of the French, like this
Wow.
year.
Right.
That
Yeah,
which
but from a physical standpoint, does he look like he's going to grow into anything
he's
like
a lot
somebody you can?
he's a lot taller than I thought he was.
Okay.
He's about 6'4". He's
Wow,
about
that's
six
nice.
four. Yeah, he's tall, and like he just doesn't have like a ton of muscle yet, but he has a
Right. He's going to
perfect
fill
build
out,
for
obviously.
tennis. Yeah, perfect build. I mean, and he's moving pretty well. I mean, I didn't want to look like too much of a creep, like watching his whole practice next to us, but I was like,
It was that
I mean,
impressive, huh?
Ashton was hitting. Well, Ashton, I mean, Ashton thinks he's good too.
Did she
Everybody
say
does.
anything like, "Look at that
Oh,
guy. Look at the way." Was
well, we
that
were
the
walking
closest you've
out.
been to
We
him?
were walking out. She's like, "Yes, we're look who we're practicing next to." So
The
and
next
then
one, right?
yeah, and then we're always kind of working on Ashton's forehand, and it's gotten like so much better. But the guys always they're so strong, they really can get that racket speed through and stuff, and that's
Right.
always something that we're working on. So I'm like, just watch him hit his forehand and go do the same thing. I mean, what else is there to talk about? And she does. She'll start like ripping some forehands, and she's like, it's one
But
of
can
those
you
like,
learn from just looking at the guy next to you saying, "You know what? I've got
sure,
some of that too. Let me,
yep,
put that in my game."
absolutely, absolutely. I'm a
Okay.
huge like believer in that. I think I used to go. My dad used to have me go watch Jimmy Connors practice, and watch his footwork and how he takes the ball early, and then I'd go out in the afternoon, and you're kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah, you're even
Yeah,
practicing
for
left-handed.
sure. Yeah, I mean, exactly. But no, I think there's definitely something to say for it. I mean, obviously, and again, you're on the court next. There's a million people standing
Of
around.
course.
You're not making it obvious, but it's like, but I think there's something to say for that for sure.
Okay.
You can see little things. I mean, you're not changing your stroke or
Right.
something, but like you sit there. I remember watching Roddick practice. One time I was at La Quinta when he was working
Okay.
with Brad Gilbert,
Yep.
and I was sitting there eating a sandwich, and I watched for 1 straight hour on that little court, that sunken court.
Yep.
For an hour straight, I watched him basically hit a serve. Brad would like float. He was on the other side. Brad would feed him like a mid-court forehand, and he'd run around and like rip a forehand. And they
Okay.
did that for like an hour straight. And I remember, and then I watched him play his match, and basically every point was that. He'd bomb a serve, run around, and rip a forehand. So, but again, like I remember that afternoon, I forgot, I might have been coaching Jesse at the time, maybe Maria, I don't know. But I remember going out in the afternoon to hit, and I was just like ripping forehands just from watching that. So I think for sure there's something to say for it.
Okay. I got to show one more picture here because I'm wondering, does Fonseca look about the same as this guy did when he was 18?
Oh, wow. Look at
How's that
that.
for an old picture?
That's amazing. Is that Pete when he was 18 or?
Well, I wasn't 18. He was.
No, Pete was 18 then.
I
That's
think he was
crazy.
either 18 or 19 there.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's a great pick.
Isn't that a great one? And that's your old
Yeah,
tournament there at
yeah.
UCLA.
Volvo,
But you
UCLA.
see the way the guys fill out, and you never know how a guy's going to do that. From a
Yeah.
natural standpoint, are you trying to build up certain muscles, that kind of a thing? That's all part of the
Yeah.
training staff too, right?
Yeah, yeah, because you can look at even the top 20 guys,
Yep.
and they all have different builds. Some are really, really skinny. Yeah, everybody's strong. I mean, you can tell, like, I mean,
Sure.
Sinner's very like thin, but really strong. You can
Yep.
see the muscles, and
Exactly.
then Medvedev is doesn't look that strong. He just really like looks skinny, but you can tell his legs are strong. So and then some guys, like Shelton's just a beast, or Alcaraz. So everybody's a little bit different. I feel like this kid Fonseca can fill out, um, get a little bit stronger, but I also don't think he's going to be built like Shelton. Let's say he's a
Yeah,
little bit more
exactly.
wiry, kind
Got
of
it.
almost more like
I don't think too
center.
many will be built like Shelton, and
No,
that's a
no.
real advantage if he just manages his game correctly.
Yeah, for sure, for
You
sure.
know.
And he moves well. I mean, that's the
Yep.
one thing. If you get too bulked up, it could hurt you when it comes to your reaction and movement, maybe. But it doesn't seem to affect him. And so again, like you said, everybody, you got to find what's right for you.
Yep. Well, for those who don't know, I've been around this game a few years and handled some of these guys here
Look
in
at
the
that.
past. I think they all look
Yeah.
familiar to you.
Yes. Wow. Some great
Unfortunately,
picks.
they're all out of the game now except for Novak.
Yeah.
And so we'll see what he does. It's going to be interesting to see how much game he has left because now he's trying to pace himself just for the big tournaments, and that's
Right.
not an easy thing to do. But I guess you have to do that when you get older, especially
Yeah.
after that last injury too.
Right. I think he's trying to find like the happy medium for him, because
Yep.
like I don't think it's realistic. I mean, I think like we talked about the 3 out of 5 and stuff. If he didn't play any tournaments to like pop into a slam
Yep.
and have it's not going to be good unless for his at his standards, unless he wins it. So
Yep.
he's not going in there and win a slam without having some tournaments under his belt. But then, like you said, at the same time, how many do you play? How far do you push yourself? So I think it's with him staying. If anything, it's his body's starting to let him down a little bit now at
Yep.
his age, which I guess happens to everybody at some
Father
point.
time,
So
baby. Can't do
yeah,
anything about
they
it.
can't do anything. So I'd like to see him have another, good run. But I also think him winning the Olympics really like, he completed everything at that
Yep.
point. So I don't want
Yep.
to say he lacks
No,
motivation,
but
because
doesn't
I
he need
think
one more for the all-time record, right? One more slam.
no, he has it, doesn't he? He
Oh,
has
I
it.
thought to break it. I thought he was tied. I have to look back on that. I'm
Yeah.
not.
Oh, he might be tied with Margaret Court or
I
something, like
believe. I believe
24.
so.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
So,
was
you know,
saying
that's
like I think the Olympics was the last thing that he could have won that he hadn't won or
yeah,
something, and then he
exactly.
won that, right? So,
Yep, yep.
I don't want to say he lacks motivation because obviously he wouldn't be here playing if he didn't have motivate, but I do feel maybe a little bit of that edge is off,
Yeah,
like that he kind of needs that, but we'll
sure.
see.
Yeah,
We'll
he's
see.
still it's all about being a competitor, and that never leaves,
Exactly. We know that. That's
especially at
right.
that level. In the meantime, you
Yes.
got the 41st player in the world and moving up the ladder quickly, Ashlyn Krueger playing on Wednesday. Uh, all I can say is good luck, and maybe
Thank
the
you.
next time we talk, I don't know if it'll be at the French, but this place,
Yes,
Wimbledon. I
Wimbledon.
love that place.
Yeah, that's a great one
Isn't
for
and
sure.
that's as good as it gets.
That's as
Did you?
good. That
How
was
many
after
times did?
that was after the tournament, huh?
Yeah, yeah. That
Yeah,
was the
because you
Sunday
could.
afternoon after the tournament.
Yeah, that's a great picture. Everybody
Look
always
at that
takes
worn
them.
out
That's
grass.
how I knew exactly. I
Exactly.
was like, usually people take them before the tournament. This is a great one
Yeah,
after
it's
the
very
tournament.
different.
Yeah,
I covered it several times, and it's really a lot of fun. I don't remember how many times did you play there?
I got to the final of Junior Wimbledon,
Okay,
and then I played the main Wimbledon probably 7 or 8 times. And
nice.
one year, that was my best slam. I got to the fourth round in 1995.
So the surface was good for
I
you.
like grass. Yeah,
Okay.
I like grass. I played. Do you remember a guy named George Fareed, Omar Fareed?
Yes, yes,
So
absolutely.
like George, he was a Davis Cup
Yes,
doctor many years. So his father, who was the Davis Cup doctor before George, had a house about a block or two from my house,
yes,
and
on the
they
west
had,
side, right?
yeah, on the west side, and he had a synthetic grass court there,
Oh, okay.
and it played somewhat similar to grass. And it was funny because I grew up as a kid when I was 12, 13, 14. I used to every Sunday play doubles with George Fareed, like this guy, Mike Christ. Did you ever hear the
I
Christ
remember the
brothers?
name.
Tom, Mike Christ. Yeah,
Yes.
and Trey Walkie. Remember Trey
Oh,
Walkie?
that I don't remember.
Yeah, he was about 10 years. He was the guy that wore the long white pants at Wimbledon one year.
Okay.
Yeah, from Southern Cal. He was a
Right.
pretty good player. But anyway, we used to play on that court a lot, um, like growing up. So I feel like when I stepped on the grass, I had like kind of an advantage because I felt
Oh,
like I
okay.
had played on it a
Nice.
lot.
Nice.
And then
And by
growing
the
up
way,
in California,
yeah,
we
exactly. I was going
came.
to say, and for those who never saw you play, and I'm sure that's a lot of because it's been a
Yeah,
while now.
right.
I can tell you, this guy can return the ball outstandingly. If he had Sampras's serve, that's a whole different
Well,
ball game.
yeah,
But
for
that's
sure.
easier said than done. That's why
That was
those
it.
guys are
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. No, that was always like, yeah, grass was good for me.
Okay.
I played good on fast court. Yeah, in California, you better learn how to play on fast courts pretty
Yeah,
quick.
exactly. Exactly.
So,
Did you ever
yeah,
sit in this seat at Wimbledon?
I probably did. Yeah, I
Okay.
probably did a few times. I might have looked a little bit different, but
You
yeah,
think
yeah, look at that.
when
Yeah,
they
they've
call
changed it so much over the
Oh, they've
years.
totally changed it now. It doesn't look anything
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
We were sitting there one day. This is in the interview room, and the way it was at least 10 years ago, anyway.
Yeah.
We were sitting in the interview room and waiting for people, waiting and waiting. And somebody says, "Hey, why don't we get some pictures here? We got nothing better to do." And that's how I
That's
ended up sitting there. And they
that's
took a
funny.
picture. It came
That's
out pretty
great.
good.
It came out pretty good. Yeah.
It's a
I
good
remember
memory,
Maria
anyway.
sitting there a bunch of times. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hey, by the way, speaking of Maria, let me see if I can find something real quick with her. I have a picture going way, way back with Maria. Let's see. Do I have it here? Here's one. How about this picture at Europlay
Arthur
UCLA?
Ashe. Yeah. Polly
Now that was
Pavilion.
Arthur Ashe's last win as a pro, and that was the
Wow.
first tournament I ever covered.
And that's on the indoor at UCLA,
Indoor
Polly
at Pauley.
Pavilion.
How
Wow.
wild is that?
That's crazy. Look at that against Tanner.
Exactly. That feels only like several hundred years ago.
Yeah.
I was going to find one more quick picture here with Maria if I can find it. Maybe I can't. But anyway, what do you say to Ash going into the next 2 days? Is it more like just relax and we're ready to
Yeah.
go, or is there some heavy duty coaching to go?
No, not too much. I mean, tomorrow we got one hit. Since we found out she plays Wednesday, we'll just practice once tomorrow.
Okay.
We're hitting at like 2 o'clock. I mean, we already figured out what tension. I mean, that's the couple days going into the tournament with the different balls. You got to kind of different stringers. You got to find like a tension that they like in the
Right.
racket and stuff. And so we kind of figured that out this afternoon. So
Okay.
hey, tomorrow will just be kind of warm up, maybe play a practice set, and then I might bring up a couple points about the girl, and then now we won't really talk about it. And then the day of the match, we'll go over it, and before her an hour or so before the
Got it.
match, and that's kind of how you do it.
Okay. It sounds good. And I
Yeah.
found the picture, another 18-year-old.
Oh yeah, look at that.
That was at Staples Center when they had the
When
WTA
yeah.
finals there.
So she was 17. Is that the year she
17,
won?
17 or
Yeah,
8. I
17.
think Serena, she might, I thought
She
Serena
beat
won, but
Serena in the final.
okay,
When I
maybe
was
that's what
with
it
her,
was.
the year she
No, you're
won,
right. She did
yeah,
win this. Yep.
yeah, and I was with her there too.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
that was the year. Yeah, that was the year she won Wimbledon. So
Got it.
she beat Serena in the finals. Serena like was up 4-0 in the third and like kind of had a pulled stomach muscle, and Maria came back and won.
Yes, I do
Yeah,
remember that now.
yeah,
Yeah, and unfortunately, we didn't draw very well in downtown LA for that tournament, and that's why they
yeah.
said we're moving it to another country.
Yeah, I went the three. I think it was 3 years in LA, 2 or 3 years,
Yeah,
and then it
something like
went
that.
to. After that, we went to Spain, Madrid. They
Yeah,
moved it to
exactly.
Madrid. Yeah,
And then
and
was
then
it Dubai
Doha.
after? Oh,
It
Doha.
was in
Okay.
Doha, and then it was in Istanbul a couple years
Wow.
too,
Okay.
and
Well,
now
whatever
it's in
works.
Saudi Arabia. I like Staples.
Yeah, that's a little more convenient.
Yeah, Istanbul, Saudi Arabia,
Yeah,
Staples
whatever.
was
Hey,
better. Yeah,
Michael, it's great to see you, man.
you
All the best.
too.
Rooting for you
Thank
this
you.
week, as always. And tell Ash, thank you for letting me steal all of her pictures from her Instagram site.
Oh yeah, I'll tell her. Yeah, I was like, oh, those are good ones. Yeah,
Yeah,
and we'll
that's
get
where I
her on
got
the
them from.
show. We'll
I
get her
stole
on the
them.
show one day.
I would love that. That'd be great.
Yeah,
And and
and I'll
and
talk
and
to Brian too. I'll try to get Brian on
that
here.
would be great.
Shelton.
Brian and his son, if possible,
Yeah,
but I want to get Brian on. I
yeah,
got so much to talk to him about.
yeah.
It's
I'll
not even
talk.
funny.
I'll maybe if I see him, I'll mention it to him here.
All right, man. All the best. Have a great week. All
Thank
right.
you. Thanks,
All right.
Ted. I
Hang on real
appreciate it.
quick. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Touching Greatness, the tennis edition.